Hello, fellow humans. Chris here again. Happy Super Bowl Sunday. May not be Sunday morning by the time you see this, but I want to try to start doing more variable types of content. And one of the things I like to do is book reviews. If you knew me in real life, you would know that I love to talk about stuff that I've watched or read and analyze it. So I'm going to start incorporating that a little bit into the channel. So I'm going to start off with a book review of a book that I am actually only about halfway through, but it is a very long read, and it's actually going to be two books, so there's going to be a second part to it. So I'm going to start where I'm at now. The book is A Promised Land by Barack Obama. And as I said, there's going to be a second volume. So this is his memoirs, and it's pretty extensive. So I think that the point I'm at right now is kind of a good break point to discuss up until that point, and then when I finish it, and then eventually the second volume will come out, I'll review that also. So for right now, I'm going to just review it's basically the first half of A Promised Land by Barack Obama. And what I did was I kind of broke it down by presentation, content, and self-awareness. These are my rules. These are my qualifiers. I'm not a professional book reviewer, so I don't know what the typical content type categorization you go with in these sorts of reviews. This is just what I made up. All right. So presentation, content, self-awareness. So for presentation, I'll start off by saying I'm actually listening to the audiobook, which is read by Barack Obama himself. So, there's not much to say here. It's an excellent read. He's an amazing speaker, very clear, very concise, great writer. Everything comes off very clearly. It flows very nicely. He's just a really good storyteller, and I definitely enjoy listening to it. Audiobooks are an interesting animal because the narrator can totally make or break the audiobook experience. And as I've mentioned before, I drive pretty far for work, so audiobooks are nice for that sort of thing. So anyway, presentation-wise, again, I'm biased because I really enjoy Barack Obama's speaking. I think he's one of the greatest speakers of my life that I've seen, and I think that it's presented extremely well. So if I'm going off the Goodreads 5-star reviews, I would give him a 5 for presentation. Content, again, pretty solid. Basically, it starts very, very early in his life and progresses through his time getting through school, being raised by a single mother. His father was almost non-existent. I think he said he only met him once when he was like 13 or 14. So that all shaped him tremendously, obviously. He talks about how he met Michelle Obama. It's a really good story about meeting her at law school and how he got into local politics first off, and then kind of working his way up through to state senate, and then to the U.S. Senate, and then eventually, of course, the White House. And all of that it's really good. It's illuminating. It highlights a lot of things that I already knew, and it also brings in a lot of things that I didn't know. A lot of personal details. One of the things I really thought was interesting was how he had a lot of tension with Michelle regarding his politics, specifically his endeavors into politics, particularly when it got up to the Senate level and beyond. It took a toll on their marriage and the family life just in general, which is understandable. It's a big commitment of time away from the family, and there definitely carries with it financial risk because he's not able to practice law while he's pursuing these endeavors, or being a professor, as he is a professor, or was anyway. So it really gives a lot of interesting kind of a background look into that part of it, which I think is pretty cool because Michelle Obama is somebody who I've always really respected. I think she comes off very smart, very compassionate and caring in her own right. You know, when she did she did a lot for healthy kids. You know, diet, food, and all that sort of thing. Just making sure we're feeding kids the right sorts of foods. I've always thought that she seemed like a very caring person and seemed very supportive of Obama. And in the public, that's kind of how it's been perceived. But behind the scenes, she was not always really enthusiastic about his endeavors. And when it came time to when the presidency presented itself as an option for him, she was not happy with it at first. But as the time went by, I think she came to see that his prospects of getting the nomination and winning were actually higher than they might have originally thought, based on the climate at the time. You know, we were in a very unpopular war. The Democrats had just completely swept through the 2006 midterm elections, took control back of the House and the Senate. Donald Rumsfeld had been fired, so it was just timing was very good for him, because if you're talking about a change, you know, somebody, a black Kenyan, not Kenyan born, but his father being from Kenya, and then there was this sort of, well, we know the story of what happened with Donald Trump down the road, about him not being a citizen of the country. But just all that aside, just a black man with the middle name Hussein, it seems kind of out there, but the time that we were in, this nation was really wanting for a change, and he represented that more than anybody. I think even Michelle Obama recognized the potential there, and obviously he went on and dominated that election, won the nomination, and very very strongly won the presidency over John McCain. So I thought that was really interesting, just getting into the behind the scenes of their life at home and the dynamics of their marriage. I think it was good to just see that they're real people and that they had their own marital problems, because there are certain things in life that I think a lot of people experience, and I know that I personally have had hardships in different aspects of my personal and work life, and it's kind of refreshing to know that even a person as highly decorated and respected as a Barack Obama struggles with those sorts of things as well. Other than that, I felt like it does a really good job of explaining what was going on with context, with the context of a president who's privy to, you know, the PDBs, the presidential daily briefs, so intelligence reports that we don't see. So kind of with all that in context, the happenings that were going on from the time he took office. At the point I'm at the book now, I'm at about kind of near the end of 2009. So basically we're in the wake of the housing crisis, the banking crisis, the massive auto bailouts that were implemented by the Bush administration, but Obama was very quickly put into a similar situation with the banks, the Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac situation there. All the deregulation that had been happening under the Bush administration were leading to all these bad loans being put out, and houses were going belly up. Banks were in danger of going bankrupt themselves. So there was there was a lot of legislation that was passed during those couple years to basically try to save these banks that were, you know, too big to fail. So he does a really good job of kind of explaining how that started from his point of view, and kind of how his inner circle sort of prepped him on what was going on. And he also gives some interesting context. He takes back to the early 90s when he was living in an apartment himself in Chicago. And I won't get too far into detail into all that. But it's just interesting. It gives good context to what we know was happening and then what was happening kind of behind the scenes from his perspective. So I thought that was really good too. I would probably give that a 4, just because it is a little bit difficult to give a full, I don't know, 4.5. Goodreads, you can't do 4.5. You can only do 4 or 5. So I might be nice and give that a 5. It was pretty good. I mean, it was good content. So the big part where I'm gonna be more critical is my self-awareness category, which truth be told, I was trying to think of a way to word it in a way that would kind of justify my being a little bit more critical, because what I mean by self-awareness here is kind of a reflection on choices that he made, and with the benefit of hindsight, being a little bit more fair in his self-assessment on possible mistakes he might have made. And why I would give the self-awareness a little bit lesser here is because, at least up until the point that I'm at, I don't think he doesn't seem particularly, regretful about the shortcomings of his administration. Now, politically, I wasn't a super huge fan of Obama's, and if you've been watching me for a while, you probably could ascertain that it's because I didn't think he went far enough progressively. And now I get that he was tied up by the Senate, and Mitch McConnell in particular, who, he outright said that he hit the whole goal for the Republican Party was to just stop anything that Obama tries to do. So I get that, but I think politically, I always felt at the time that Obama was too soft when it came to really strong-arming and exposing the Republicans for the obstructing that they were doing. In particular, things like in 2010 when they decided to extend the Bush tax cuts because the Republicans were holding up the continuation of unemployment benefits because we were still in the wake of a horrible recession. They were going to hold up the continuation of those unemployment benefits unless we also extended the Bush tax cuts, which Obama had always. He campaigned against that, and ultimately he went ahead and allowed for the extension of the Bush tax cuts. And I always felt like that kind of demonstrated his weakness. If I'm being honest here, I felt that he was weak in that he would very quickly go across the aisle to compromise, which obviously, compromise politically is a necessity. But at the same time, there are certain times when you can just say, you know what, this is what we're putting on the table, and I'm going to let the American people see who is the one deciding to hold back unemployment benefits. And I just felt like that was an example of a trend that I saw a lot, and it happened with Obamacare as well. Just giving too much power to the right, to the Republicans. And I guess what I'm saying in hindsight, so when I say self-awareness, I'm not critiquing the book itself on what he did at the time politically. That's a different discussion. Like, what do we think of his performance as president? But for the context of the book itself, what I'm judging it on is his today honest reflection on his choices in the past. And aside from those examples, some of the things that really stuck out to me were he was extremely concerned with how he was perceived, especially by white America. And you saw this with the Reverend Jeremiah Wright situation, where he had said some inflammatory things at a church, and he had been Obama's reverend years before, and Obama kind of had to distance himself from that because it was a political liability, obviously. But what Reverend Wright had said in totality with like his whole sermon was honestly not really that bad. If you take into context the whole message he was saying, but Obama understood that what he was saying could be a political liability, and he really had to distance himself from him. And he actually ended up removing Jeremiah Wright from being one of his big speech. It might have been I can't remember if it was for the actual DNC for the nomination or if it was something before that. But he had removed Jeremiah Wright from being one of his introducers, and Wright was kind of hurt by that. And the reason he did that was because of how he thought he would be perceived. And I'm not necessarily saying that he was wrong in that specific situation. Again, I can't put myself in that situation. I wasn't there, and the pressures that he was under. So I can't say that I'm judging him specifically on that, but I just felt like there was a trend of him making choices based on white America and our sense of what makes us feel good and what makes us feel kind of, oh, we don't want to talk about that, uncomfortable. And a lot of it had to do with, when it was critical of the history of white America towards black people in this country. And I get that, again, politically, you have to do some of that. He might not have gotten the nomination. He might not have won if he had been more honest. But at the same time, I don't believe that he believed, or I guess I should say, I think that he repressed a lot of truths, in order to get to where he was, politically where he was trying to get. Now, does that make him a sellout? I don't know. Again, he might not have been able to be president if he had been more honest, but at the same time, I didn't think personally that he did a particularly good job as president of bridging the racial gap. And I'm saying that as a white man, so I recognize that I am speaking from a different point of view, but I do know that a lot of black Americans, particularly ones that lived in Flint, did not feel that he represented them. And when he went to Flint and he drank that water, when they had the lead in the water, which I think that it had come up that he actually didn't. It wasn't even actually Michigan, like Flint water. It was just like bottled water that he brought in. They felt betrayed by him, and I feel like that was sort of an example of the kinds of things that he would do to try to appease people. And I just felt like in general, and this is one of my critiques of Obama as a president, was just that he was too concerned with just being liked and being nice and reaching across the aisle and appeasing white men, to be totally honest about it. And again, I don't want to come down on it too hard, because again, I do acknowledge that you have to kind of play that game to a certain extent. But again, if we're talking in retrospect here, his analysis of self in the book, I don't feel like there's a lot of self-critique in that aspect of it, in his decision-making politically to, again, for example, Reverend Wright, distancing himself from him. In retrospect, I don't know if he feels bad about that or maybe thinks that he should have done differently, because a lot of times it comes up in the book where he'll acknowledge a decision that maybe was difficult or something that he wasn't sure about, but even in retrospect, he says, I would still make that same decision. So anyway, I mean, that's just kind of my take on it. So self-awareness, I'd probably bring it down, maybe 3. again, I'm not a professional book reviewer, so I'll get better at this as I go along. That's just kind of my overall take. Again, the presentation and the content itself, I think, is excellent. I've always liked Barack Obama as a man. I think he's a good person. I think he's a great family man. I think that he does have a good heart and he has good intentions. I just think that he has been too concerned with being liked. Part of that is the fact that he was just going to be hated no matter what anyway. I mean, there's just a base of Republicans who were just never going to like him, never did and never will. And so just kind of like, why bother trying to win them over? Rather than trying to reach across the aisle to people that don't even want to work with you anyway, why not build off your base and kind of embrace the left, to be totally honest, and embrace progressivism. But at the end of the day, Barack Obama, for all his strengths as a person, and as I said, an excellent speaker, and I think a great man as a human being, just your everyday standard, basic sort of corporate business capitalistic politician that we're used to. And I think that was kind of, for me personally, it was an awakening, because Obama was the second president that I voted for, or the second election that I voted in for president. The first one being George Bush and Kerry. And I personally felt really strongly about Obama. I was young, and my young, wide-eyed, like, oh wow, look at this guy. He's really different. You can tell. I mean, I went and saw him speak live, and I just was blown away by his speaking ability and what he had to. He always said the right things. He always said the things that you wanted to hear. So after he won in the first couple years of presidency, kind of felt like I had the wool removed from my eyes and realized that, okay, no, he's not horrible, but he's just like any other basic centrist Democrat. So, it was a good learning experience for me. So I guess it just in general, I didn't feel like he's... Now, to be fair, I haven't finished the book. I'm only halfway through, and he's also got a second volume, which hasn't come out yet. But anyway, I'll just leave it at that for now. If you've read the book, feel free to let me know in the comments what you think. If you haven't, I definitely would still recommend it. I think it's a great read, and if you enjoy audiobooks and you enjoy just Obama speaking, which, as I said, I do. I think he's an excellent speaker. His voice it's a very nice, soothing voice. It's enjoyable to listen to, so it's worth it for that as well. And I think it's enlightening, and it's got a lot of interesting content and context. So check it out. Right now, my running grade would probably be a 4 on Goodreads. I'll leave my info to Goodreads. I guess if anyone's on Goodreads, friend me on there. I like looking at other people's reviews of books as well. So anyway, I will update this when I get to the rest of the book. And if you have any comments or questions on the book, let me know, and I will catch up with you all again. Happy Sunday. Happy Super Bowl Sunday. Go Bengals, just because I don't ever root for a team from LA as a general rule. So have a great rest of your day, and remember, don't be afraid to question the consensus.